Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadline so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Have I Got News for You is back for another season. Roy Wood Jr., Amber Ruffin, and Michael Ian Black are finding the funny in the week's biggest stories. Have I Got News for You returns Saturday at 9 on CNN and stream next day on Max.
Hello and welcome to Outward, Slate's podcast about queer life. I'm Christina Cauterucci, a senior writer at Slate. And for the past few weeks, it's felt like we've been standing in front of a fire hose, trying to make sense of the flood of power grabs and devastating policy changes coming from the White House. Since Donald Trump took office last month, he's issued a slew of executive orders designed to make it harder for trans people to participate in public life. Two of them specifically target trans kids, with restrictions on gender-affirming care and the kinds of support they can get at school. There was also an executive order that will make trans people revert to the gender marker assigned to them at birth when they renew their passports, which sets the stage for the harassment and humiliation of trans people at airports, hotels, anywhere else you have to show your documents. Even though we knew, in some sense, that this was coming, it's all been really demoralizing and I'm sure scary for me, and I'm sure a lot of you. Sometimes it feels right to just tune things out and not pay attention to the news. But also for me, I'm really grateful to have this show as a kind of container for grappling with everything that's happening right now and understanding the impact. So to that end, this week, I wanted to talk to someone who's going to be facing the fallout from yet another Trump executive order. This one lays the groundwork for a new ban on trans people in the military. And I have two people with me this week to discuss what that will look like and how advocates are fighting it. Geirid Morgan is a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy, and Sasha Buchert is a lawyer at Lambda Legal. We'll get right into it after the break. Here's a little tip for all the music fans out there. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. You heard right, 99%. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back, which means you could earn rewards for those almost front row seats, ride shares to the venue, even that concert merch you've had your eye on since it dropped. If all of that sounds like music to your ears, remember, it pays to Discover, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report. Learn more at discover.com/credit card.
You found your person. Now let the Knot help you with everything else. The Knot connects you to the wedding inspo, vendors, venues, and planning tools you need to make your day totally you. Having helped plan 25 million weddings, we've got your back when it comes to every little detail like RSVPs, budgets, and more. Because your wedding comes to life with the connections that matter the most. Get started at theknot.com/audio. The Knot. Let's plan your wedding together.
Welcome to the White Lotus in Thailand.
It's a wellness center.
You should get a facial. The lady in the airport thought you were my dad.
Oh my God.
The Emmy Award-winning HBO original series returns.
There has been more crime on the island.
I'm a little freaked out.
What happens in Thailand stays in Thailand.
Oh, what does that mean?
It means we're not dead yet.
Amen. Amen.
A new season of the HBO original series The White Lotus premieres February 16th at 9 p.m. on Max.
We're back with Geirid Morgan, a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy. Thank you so much for being here, Geirid.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We're also joined by Sasha Buchert, a lawyer at Lambda Legal. Sasha, welcome to Outward.
Thanks so much, Christina.
So, Sasha, can you start by just giving me the basics of what this new executive order says and how it compares to the trans military ban, quote unquote, that Trump enacted in his first term?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities, actually. In the first term, there was this, series of tweets that was issued, on a July 2017 morning, and they were vague and weren't clear about, the intent or how, the ban would be implemented eventually. But it was a very clear directive that trans people should be, even though they've met every requirement that the military has to offer and have been doing so successfully for going on 10 years now, without taking 10 minutes to look at the actual conditions on the ground, where trans people are serving, just issued this executive order that's an insult, to the service of men and women who are putting on their uniforms every day to defend our country, and just disparage them in the worst terms I've ever seen in a government document, and, ordered the Department of Defense to move forward with implementing what the language in the executive order was, which is vague and ambiguous and insulting. But, the intent is clear that they want to remove trans folks who have been serving our country honorably.
And in the first Trump administration, it went through the courts, and essentially what happened was that people who were already out and trans and serving in the military could stay, but people couldn't sort of newly come out as trans in the military. Is that right?
That's the way they tried to frame it. I think disingenuous, to say the least, to say that, you can stay, but you're going to be stamped with a badge of inferiority, and your promotional opportunities are zero because, the military has clearly, decided that this is how they're going to treat people that are qualified to do the job in every other way. This is the exact opposite of a meritocracy. It's not looking at, the question of whether someone can do the job. It's about who they are rather than how their performance looks. But yeah, in the first round, that was the actual policy that ended up, coming out of the Department of Defense, eliminated all, folks seeking to enlist in the military or to commission, to become officers if they're already in, officer candidate school. It stripped healthcare from everyone serving, and, it grandfathered some folks in, but that doesn't mean that the ban didn't apply to them, because their career plans have been upended, and they have to, instead of doing their job and going forward to serve the country, they're having to look over their shoulder to decide whether or not they're next in the chopping block for, a discriminatory administration that isn't looking at their actual service. And again, I just, sorry to sound like a broken record, but it's just the facts that you're talking about population who has served in every austere environment. You're talking about the military has invested millions of dollars in their careers, and they have, again, met and exceeded every neutral standard, service-based standard. And it's just shameful to bring in the kind of ideologically driven language that we're seeing from this administration, targeting a vulnerable community that's just trying to do their job.
Absolutely. Geirid, you've served in the military for more than a decade, but you didn't come out as trans at work until 2022. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So what did it feel like to you, prior to your coming out, serving under that first trans military ban?
So I'll start off by saying I'm here in my personal capacity. Everything I say in the context of this interview is not necessarily the opinion of Department of Defense, the U.S. Navy, but my opinion alone. So with that, to answer your question specifically, serving under the original Trump ban was a weird time for me personally, because I was still kind of struggling with my gender identity, whether or not I wanted to transition. There was a lot of closeted behavior and lifestyle stuff happening at that point in my life. So I was not quite there yet. And having the option not be on the table was, I guess, in some senses, like, I don't know that I would have gotten to a place where I would have come out at that point in my life. But towards the end of the Trump administration, the first one, and Joe Biden becoming the next president, I was rapidly getting to the point where I knew that I wanted to address my gender dysphoria and start my transition. So when that ban was lifted, it was kind of like a big door had been opened for me, and I was able to walk through it for the first time in my life. And things have been demonstrably better ever since. My relationships have been better. My work performance has been better. I've been much happier and centered and inside myself in a way that I had not experienced through much of my adult life.
I mean, thinking back on your experience living under that first ban, knowing or trying to figure out, even for yourself, that's hard enough to even, be trying to think about coming out, especially at work, especially even in the military that does allow trans people to serve, like still a very regimented environment with strict norms. I imagine that it added a whole nother level of discomfort. Did it change your workplace at all? Did you know other people who were out at the time who were affected, or did it, embolden any kind of anti-trans attitudes in your workplace?
At the time when the original Trump ban started, so we'll kind of go back in time a few years further. The Obama administration lifted the original ban on open service in 2016, I believe. And so there was like this brief window where folks were able to come out on active duty and start their transition. And at that time, I was serving in a very small Navy base in the Panhandle of Florida. And it was very surprising to me to see that we had 2 service members come out as trans just on that installation alone in that short window of time, one of whom was the base command master chief. And so that was very inspirational to me as someone who was still kind of struggling with my gender identity. And I looked to those people as examples of what could possibly be. And then very quickly that window closed. And I would say I was also kind of surprised at how those individuals were received at that particular military installation. Overwhelmingly positive. The command master chief that came out, for example, this is a person who'd been in the Navy for many decades, had a very storied career, lots of deployments and things like that. And people had known this individual one way. And when they came out and began presenting as a female at work, it for sure stirred a lot of conversation and discussion, but overwhelmingly positive. It was encouraging to me at that point.
Yeah, and I remember some of the hearings around the first trans military ban where leaders of every branch of the armed services were kind of saying the same thing, that actually this hasn't been a problem at all. And then when you did come out in 2022, did you consider the possibility that some future Republican president could revive
Absolutely.
the ban?
That is one of the first things I discussed with my therapist was what happens if I do this and I complete my medical transition. I'm completely, socially transitioned at work, and some policies change in the future. And we go back to a ban on open service. And, my therapist said some therapeutic things at the time and assured me that, let's not put carts before horses and let's focus on what you need as a person right now. And I think that was absolutely the right decision. And I don't regret any moment of my life since, despite what we're facing.
I'm wondering how it felt for you in the months leading up to the election, seeing, these 2 different people running for office who had such control over what your work life and your life might look like.
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that for everyone in my community, all transgender service members, or even just gender expansive individuals that are in uniform, the last year and a half has been incredibly stressful. The temperature around trans issues has been turned up so high, and the conversation has turned into, an outright argument and heated debate amongst a lot of people that really have no experience with our community, don't know us, don't engage with us in any meaningful way. And that's been kind of surreal. I've expressed this in private conversations and therapist offices as well. I feel like the last 2 years have been all of my hopes and dreams coming true, and also my worst nightmares coming true at the same time. It's been a wild ride.
Certainly, I imagine not great for anyone's work, even if you want to talk about, I'm sure you're still doing a fantastic job, but if you want to talk about actual the impact on military quote unquote readiness, which is what they always talk about, putting thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people in a state of intense fear doesn't seem the best way to do it.
Of course, I agree. I would say that in the military, it's not just a job, right? It's a lifestyle. It's a commitment, something that you have to make a lot of personal sacrifices for. And we don't go to work every day expecting things to be easy or set up to make things as, seamless and easy as possible. We expect obstacles, and we're trained and taught to clear those obstacles. And I would say that the vast majority of transgender service members, including myself, have gone to work every day these last couple of years, done the best job we can in all the places around the world that we're doing that job. And speaking for myself personally, I've met every performance requirement that has been set for me, every standard that's been set for me prior to and after my transition. I've met every physical and medical readiness standard that has been set for me. So we're there, we're doing the job. Nothing is true today that wasn't true a week ago or 2 weeks ago in terms of our ability to do the job.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Geirid Morgan and Sasha Buchert.
Build a routine with Ollie that supports your wellness needs, like getting your daily vitamins and minerals with Ollie's multi-gummies, or keeping your mood upbeat with all the vitamin D in Hello Happy. Give your gut health some support with probiotics, and wake up feeling refreshed after taking Ollie Sleep. Do wellness on your terms. Find Ollie at a Walmart or Target near you, or at ollie.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
We're back. Obviously, this executive order is going to be hammered out in court. I know Lambda Legal recently filed a lawsuit challenging the ban. Sasha, can you explain that lawsuit for me? What argument are you making, and what does the lawsuit rest on?
The lawsuit tracks very similarly the lawsuit we filed in 2017 challenging the ban, at that time. And, we are moving forward with a number of plaintiffs representing, the different branches that it tells their story in particular, similar to what we're hearing today, from Geirid and her experience. This is similarly the case for so many of our plaintiffs who are just, doing their jobs and doing it well, that are being, threatened with being removed, from service. So we will be bringing a number of claims that are similar to the claims that we brought, in the last challenge. And, some of those include, the argument that, this violates the Constitution because you're, making a decision based on someone's sex assigned at birth, which is prohibited under the Equal Protection Clause. So, and there's, some other claims that, we've included as well that track, what we filed in the last go around. And, we are cautiously optimistic. We know that the judiciary has changed a little bit, but we're confident that the courts will see through the smokescreen here. The Trump administration has made no secret about its animus targeting transgender people. They spent, I think, $200 billion towards the end of their campaign targeting trans people. This is clearly an ideological campaign targeting trans people, and that'll be part of the lawsuit as well. So, we're excited to move forward. We're following, another case that was filed recently, and we're excited to be part of this fight. And so couldn't be more proud of working with folks like Geirid and the other folks that have been impacted by this hateful move by the administration.
And Geirid, I know you are the advocacy director for Sparta Pride, which is a group for trans service members. How have people been dealing with what's been going on? And how were people preparing for the possibility of what's now happened?
Yeah, so we call back to your previous question. The rhetoric and the intensity around the conversation of trans rights has been very elevated in the last year or more. It's obviously something that we at Sparta pay attention to and have been working very hard to assure our members who are transgender service members, most on active duty. We also have some members that are veterans, just assure them that we are doing everything we can to advocate for them inside the DoD, outside of the military system, and just try to keep everyone's head in the game, focused on doing their jobs, not distracted by all the noise, and making sure folks feel supported. That's probably been our primary mission over the last couple of years. In terms of preparation for the situation that we're in right now, that's, mostly just a lot of internal discussions within Sparta about what we would do if another ban were to take place. And I think that the result of those efforts and those discussions and that planning has been what you're seeing now within the transgender service community, service member community, which is there is a lot of hope and there's a lot of resolve to get through this. People are not panicking for the most part, which is really great to see. And I think people generally feel supported. They know that there are lots of people that have our backs, whether it's legal teams at some of the other advocacy orgs, people within the DoD, and the American population at large, support us. And I think that we're feeling that this time around.
That is great. This might not be a statistic that you have at hand, but do you know approximately how many trans service members there are right now?
We know that there's thousands. Like, we can safely say that. It sort of depends on how you define transgender, but regardless of how you thread that needle, there's at least thousands of us currently serving on active duty. So
can you give me a sense of what the impact would be on the military? And we'll talk about the personal impact too, obviously, but how would that even work? I can't even imagine, thousands of people's service being terminated in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a fantastic question. And that's kind of the question that a lot of people are asking right now is, what would the impacts be? And all we have to do is say things like, there's thousands of us. And then immediately people say, whoa, that's a measurable impact that we need to kind of consider before we do anything drastic here. But I would just add that the concrete number, how many of us there are, is one data point. Another data point is who these people are and where they are in their careers. And there is a few data sources out there that clearly indicate that most trans service members are officers or senior enlisted. So these are people with over a decade of military experience, people who have gone through a lot of military professional career development trainings and service schools and deployments and all sorts of things. So this is a tremendous amount of experience and a tremendous amount of money that's been invested in the career development of these people. So losing large numbers of people that are mid-career like that, that's a loss of, I think we can safely say, billions of dollars of investment, and would take, more than a decade to replace that level of experience. It is a real impact that we have to consider.
Yeah. Obviously the numbers almost distract from what feels like a more important question, which is how this is impacting people on a personal level. How are you taking care of yourself, and how are you thinking about your future in a time of such uncertainty?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The last couple of weeks have been really hard. I've been very deeply saddened by the order when it came out. This is a job that I love. This is something that I've dedicated my life to. As I said earlier, it's not just a job, right? It's not just a career. It's service. It's a commitment. You build your life around this pathway. You structure your family life around it. You really kind of go all in, and you make a lot of personal sacrifices to do this job and do it well. And it's something that I have, firmly believe in the mission of the United States Navy and the Department of Defense. I love being a sailor. I love being an officer in the Navy. I love serving my country. And the thought of that going away sometime in the near future is heartbreaking to me. As far as how I take care of myself from here on out, I think I'm really not thinking too much further into the future yet. Still in a little bit of shock and an evaluation of what all this means. I can just say that I'm going to keep putting my uniform on, keep going to work, and keep doing my job the best I can for as long as I'm able to do it. I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Have coworkers reached out with anything to say about what's going on?
Yeah, I've had a few folks reach out to just offer their support. My leadership my entire chain of command within my agency has spoken with me and reiterated their support for me as a person, reiterated their appreciation for my service. And they are in a bit of a hold pattern right now as far as what to do next. I was actually slated to leave my current job and shift over to a new job in March. So I was going to leave this month and start my new billet in March. And we don't know if that's going to happen now. So there's a lot of questions about whether or not I'm going to hang out at my current agency, sort of in limbo until we figure out what's going on with the incoming policy, which would leave the command I was going to or expecting a field grade officer to show up in March and start working and take over a leadership role within a department there. They'll be missing that person, so they need to kind of figure out what to do. So there's a lot of, I guess, personnel management and logistical concerns and ruminations right now, but the personal concerns have all been supportive and very reassuring.
That's really good to hear. I know what we're talking about is just sort of one little facet of this broader assault on trans people in the U.S. and especially under this current administration. So I know this is not, the only thing probably you're thinking about or the only thing, the only possible effects of this administration in your life. But in terms of your orientation toward the military, like you said, the thing that you've devoted your life to and your career to, has this sort of back and forth administration to administration made you question at all whether it's worth it to continue giving so much of yourself to this institution that can so easily, kind of turn its back on you from the top?
That's a great point, and it does make things very challenging. I would say that, as I mentioned before, challenge is part of the job, right? And that's part of what you sign up for. You sign up for obstacles and just in roadblocks in your way. That's what makes it service and not a job, right? And I think the evidence that most transgender service members feel that just like every other service member is the fact that there's some of us that have been serving since the Obama administration, right? Mm-hmm. And through all of the bans and lifting of bans and the reassignment of bans, they're still there. They're still doing their job because they love their jobs. They love serving their country, and they will clear any obstacle and navigate any roadblock in order to do that. And I feel the same way.
Is there anything else that I haven't asked either of you that you think it would be important for me to know or for listeners to know?
One thought that has come to mind as I've heard the word meritocracy thrown around a lot recently, and Sasha brought this up earlier in the interview. The military is a meritocracy by design, and it always has been. And the idea that the military is somehow not a meritocracy because certain groups of people are given the opportunity to meet certain standards and serve just does not reflect my experience and the reality as I see it. I, like all other transgender service members, have earned my place in the military every step of the way. Every performance standard, every physical standard, every medical standard before and after my transition, I have met or exceeded. And if that's not the definition of a meritocracy, then I guess I really don't know what is. I believe, like every other person in the military, certainly every other person in a leadership position in the military, that the military is not a right. It is a privilege that you have to earn, and you earn that privilege by meeting certain standards. And if you were in uniform today, whether you are transgender or not, that means you have met those standards.
I mean, I guess I just think about the kind of mental health impact of giving your life to a place and spending your day in and day out in an institution that kind of is telling you, back and forth, sometimes yes, sometimes no, about whether you are a valued and important part of this, American institution that you're a part of. And especially if you're in this moment when so much of the rest of the political discourse is also casting doubt on your kind of value and worth as a person, it just feels like an incredibly difficult place to be.
It absolutely can be. It's a heavy lift. I won't deny that at all. Transgender service members have carried that load for years, with being allowed to openly serve for almost a decade now. And the result of transgender people being open to carrying that load, I think, is expressed very nicely in some data that's out there that shows that transgender people are twice as likely to have served in the military as the general population.
Wow.
And there's lots of reasons and best guesses as to why that is, why the military is so attractive to trans people. Maybe particularly younger trans people. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's really fascinating. And it just points to this idea that not only are we technically capable of doing the job and serving in the military, but we're very willing to. We're very willing to take on that risk of changing policies and possible, military cultural barriers and roadblocks.
That's so interesting. I also heard somewhere that and I don't know if you know whether or not this is true, but that the U.S. military is the largest employer of trans people in the world, which I guess makes sense when you think about how small other institutions or companies are, but it's still kind of a striking figure to think about.
Yeah. That tracks very well with other little bits and pieces that we've heard. Makes a lot of sense.
I'll just add that, the open service isn't unique to the United States, that trans folks are serving openly and proudly in places like the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Israel, Australia, and just 20-some countries. So it's not unique to the United States.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, thank you both so much for giving your time during this busy week and difficult moment. Again, Geirid Morgan, a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy, and Sasha Buchert, a lawyer at Lambda Legal. Thank you both for joining.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's it for our main show today, but there's always more Outward over in the Slate Plus feed. This week, our producer, Palace Shaw, will help us update the gay agenda. If you're not already a subscriber, remember, by joining Slate Plus, you will get ad-free podcasts, extra segments on all our shows, and you'll never hit a paywall on the Slate site. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of the Outward show page, or visit slate.com/outwardplus to get access wherever you listen. Our email address is always open for your feedback and your topic ideas. We're at outwardpodcast@slate.com. Our show is produced by Palace Shaw. If you like Outward, please subscribe in your podcast app, tell your friends about it, and rate and review the show so other people can find it. Stay gay, everyone.